the idea that the positioning of your lower back under 700 pounds doesn't have anything to do with your rate of injury, it just seems silly. It just does. And for the data to convince me otherwise, it would just have to be so much more fleshed out than it is right now. And I mentioned the polls, where they interview people, where they calculate common rates of injury in different sports. There is nothing that separates pro level or lifelong competitive lifters. People have been going at it for 5, 10, 15 years with a lot of effort, a lot of consistency, constantly chasing more loads. There's nothing to separate those people from your typical weekend warrior or people that haven't been doing it long or people that don't take it that seriously. I listened to Jordan Feigenbaum, an old podcast he had with Lane Norton. And granted, Lane Norton loves to hear himself talk, man. I've never heard somebody who loves mulling over the banal details of a life event. It took him 40 minutes to just sum up his history of back injuries. But that aside, Feigenbaum came back with something like, oh, well, actually, that's not outside the norm of what we should see with back injuries in lifting. And that was one of the most shocking things. I guess it wasn't shocking as far as what I know from people who obsess over statistics to do when they're faced with trying to turn that into a meaningful real life conclusion. But it's like you have a guy who's known for having insanely limited performance because he has this trend, this pattern of things going sideways. And they were so used to this narrative that normalizes injury as, well, it's just something that happens and you just get back on the horse and your body adapts and on and on and on. It's like, well, yeah, the body's amazing. It does adapt until it doesn't. And that's true with everything. And if the things you're doing aren't leading to that right answer, that adaptation you're looking for, you got to do something different. And for many of us, that involves finding where you're weak. And by the way, this is exactly how we troubleshoot every other issue in all of lifting culture, period. Overhead press, bench press, stone loading, whether it's your biceps, your deadlift, your squat, your yoke walk, your snatch, your clean and jerk, we're constantly looking at it from that framework of where are you deficient and how can we reinforce it. It is only in this particular lift with this particular group of people utilizing these really flimsy studies to try to extrapolate these really concrete conclusions that we're getting this, it'll be fine kind of rhetoric. And it's just very strange to me. Again, every other sport relies on some fundamental that you start with, some fundamental technique, some fundamental movement patterns that you drill to set you up for success. But the idea that you should just bend over and pull away and different people are going to pull different ways and it's all good, and we're not going to try to correlate any of that to getting a better outcome, it just seems silly to me. Best case scenario, you're going to deal with these little aches and pains. That's normal. And you're just not going to progress as well as you could. That, yeah, you'll have these incidents happen. You'll, stumble and then get back up, start training again. Worst case scenario is it's going to lead to debilitating issues that plague you every time you try to make a comeback. Lane Norton dealt with that. I dealt with that. Brian Carroll dealt with that. Buddy of mine, Chris Burke, some of you might know, Leifa Engel's boyfriend's very good strongman competitor. He's looking fucking jacked and juicy over the last couple of years. And that dude I was in a contest with, and he had to pull out. It was like a 600-pound yoke run, which is not a lot for the middleweight competitors. And he had to pull out because his back and hip were so fucked up. And I remember watching his journey. It took him years. It took him a couple years of steady, dedicated bracing work. And this is something that plagued him throughout his entire career. And it wasn't until he got to this skill set where these problems started to go away. And I think sometime mid last year, he pulled an 855 deadlift. The guy bulks like crazy, man. He was big around that. He was probably 280, 290 if I had to guess. Got strong as shit, no back issues to speak of. And I talked to him directly, and he's like, dude, it's 100% the bracing work. And we're not guessing when we say that. Again, the barbell medicine guys have said it's not that like McGill stuff or those movements actually, they might work or they might alleviate pain, but not for the reasons you think. It's not that there's something special about them. Well, if you're the guy that's been injured for 10 years and you've tried 100 different things, and that's the thing that allows you to pull the truck out of the mud pit, and then you see that pattern repeated in many other people that were in the same circumstances, it's reasonable at least to think that it might. Like, it's reasonable at least to think that that might have some correlation. Sure, maybe further study is needed. I'm very fine with that. But it's the absolutist statement in the other direction I have a big problem with.